Hello class, good day. This is Ms. Jong and welcome to Practical Research 2. Now we are already on our chapter 3. That means we are going to collect our data and conduct our survey to our respondents. Before we do so, I'd like to discuss on, let's watch this YouTube video about what is research ethics so that you will have an idea. And also this is a refresher because for practical research 1 you were already informed of what is research ethics because it's also in the book. Okay, so let's listen to this discussion.
Hi everyone, welcome back to High School Science 101. Today we are covering something that's very, very important, but something that's not really covered in high schools, and that's research ethics. Every single researcher that deals with human participants needs to have a really good understanding of research ethics, otherwise their research won't be approved by the university and they may actually cause harm to the people involved. Since a lot of high schools don't teach you about ethical research, I've created this video which summarizes some of the key points from the National Statement of Ethical Conduct in Human Research 2007, and this is a document that sets the guidelines for research within Australia. When we're conducting research involving humans, we need to remember to refer to them as participants, not as subjects, and we need to have an underlying respect for them as human beings. Respect their welfare, their beliefs, their customs, their privacy, confidentiality, and their cultural sensitivities. A crucial part of the partnership between you as a researcher and your participants is to minimize the amount of potential harm you could cause to them. Harm can be physical, psychological, social, economic, or legal. Your research involving humans will have a certain level of risk attached to it. For example, it could be a negligible level of risk, which means there's no foreseeable risk and it may just cause some inconvenience to your participants, or it could be a low level of risk, in which case there might be a bit of discomfort. The level of risk really depends on the type of harm that may be caused, the likelihood of that harm, and the severity of the harm. As a researcher, you must do everything possible to minimize the amount of harm to your participants. If you do intend to cause harm, you must also justify why your benefits of your study will outweigh the harm that you're causing. For example, you might be working on a cancer treatment, and the side effects of that treatment will cause a bit of harm, but the potential benefits of finding a cure for cancer may outweigh those side effects. Consent is another really important aspect of ethical research, and it basically involves giving people the capacity to choose whether or not they want to be involved in your research. This includes potential participants understanding what your research is about and what's required of them. There's a lot of key information that you need to give to potential participants. This includes the contact details of yourself and where complaints should be directed to, how their privacy and confidentiality will be protected, their right to withdraw at any stage, what the sources of funding are for your research, whether there's any payments to be made to participants, how your data will be managed and used, the likelihood of your research being published, and what you think the foreseeable benefits are of your research.
For research consent, we already discussed this in Practical Research 1. In fact, you were provided consent forms, right? And before you used to give that to your informant before you interview them, and then you had to have them sign. Now for our consent, we will incorporate the consent letter to the Google form that we will be conducting, since our survey will be via the Google Forms. So we will have the consent first there through Google Form, and then after the consent is the survey questions. Okay, let's proceed.
Sometimes an opt-out approach is used, where the information is provided to potential participants, but they must actively tell you that they don't want to be involved, otherwise their consent is assumed. An example of this is organ donation. If you live in a country where they have an opt-out approach for organ donation, and you don't want your organs to be harvested to help other people if you pass away, then you need to actively tell them that you don't want that to happen. Otherwise, if you're involved in an accident and your organs can be harvested to help other people, then they will assume that you've provided consent because you haven't actively opted out. Sometimes, due to the nature of the research and if there's a very low risk of harm, the researcher can offer limited disclosure. This means that the participants only receive a very small amount of information about the study because it actually involves some sort of concealment or deception. A key issue to be mindful of is the issue of coercion and the risk of people feeling pressured to be involved in your study. This can be especially important depending on the relationship between the researcher and the people that you're trying to invite into your study. For example, if I'm a teacher and I want to invite my students to participate in my study, they might feel coerced or a sense of pressure to get involved in my study because I am their teacher, and this in itself becomes an issue.
If the respondents choose not to participate in the research, if they opt out, like in the consent form, they do not want to participate. So again, it's fine. Do not force your respondents to participate in the research. Okay, so that is very important.
How you'll recruit the people to be involved in your study is an important decision, and you might even use more than one strategy in your project. Your method of recruitment should be relevant to your topic and context, and you must be able to justify why you've chosen to include or exclude certain people or groups of people from being involved in your study. You need to also consider whether your recruitment strategy interferes with your consent process. In other words, does your method of recruiting people interfere with their ability to voluntarily participate in your study? Again, this links in with that example that I just gave you of me being a teacher doing research with my students. If I recruit all the students within my classes that I personally teach, that could interfere with their ability to think that this is a voluntary study, and they might feel compelled to have to participate. When you've collected some results, you need to think about how easy it would be for others to identify people or organizations that have been involved in your study. Obviously, the chances of this happening are at their highest when you've used names or photos, but also be cautious of using birth dates, addresses, or regions. This area also concerns who has access to your data and how and where it is stored. Minimizing the amount of information you collect and store about each person, as well as replacing their names with codes or numbers, will help preserve their anonymity. That gives you a very broad overview of the main things you need to be mindful of when you're doing research involving people. Some other things that the standards cover that I haven't really gone into include data management, sharing of your data with other researchers, and communicating your results to your participants and other third parties. The standards also include a whole chapter on biological research, as well as another chapter on ethical considerations that apply to specific groups of people. These specific groups require special ethical considerations, and they include pregnant women, fetuses, children, people in dependent relationships, people who can't give consent due to their medical state, people with a mental impairment or disability, people involved in illegal activities, Indigenous people, and people in other countries. If you intend to do research through a university, I would strongly recommend that you click on the link in the description and read these standards for yourself, or find the relevant standards for your country. Nonetheless, what I've covered in this video are the main things that you need to think about in order to make your research as ethical as possible. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Again, researchers, we need to always bear in mind research ethics when we are conducting research, because of course it's important, and we always have to think about our research respondents, their safety. Okay, it's our priority. If the respondents would choose on the consent, they do not want to participate, then that's fine. Again, we do not force anyone to involve in our research. It should be voluntary. That's why it's very important in the consent form that they give consent that they want to participate in the research. It should be voluntary. Okay. So this video is from High School Science 101, and I've chosen this video because it explains research ethics specifically towards senior high school students. So that's it. Now, since this is just a review, I will not dig further on research ethics, and I know you already know what ethics is, research ethics specifically, because we already did practical research 1. So this is more of a review for everyone. And since we are talking about research, now let us refresh our minds now. What is plagiarism, right? Because it's part of the rubrics that if you have to have zero, not really zero, but minimal plagiarism issues on your paper. So about 8 to 10% is acceptable, but if it's more than that, then there's an issue with the paper. And so let's watch this video. This is from Modern Librarian Memoirs. Okay, let me subtract. Okay, and this was in 2018. So it's how to avoid plagiarism in 5 easy steps. All right, let's watch the video.
Plagiarism is something we hear about often, but do we really know what it means? You might hear the word used by your professor as part of a warning and something you should avoid. But how do you do this? Let's take a look. First, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism occurs when a writer uses someone else's language, ideas, or other original material without acknowledging its source. Whether you intend to or not, you are stealing someone else's ideas. Here's an example. You're writing a paper for your English class and you find a great quote from a book that fits perfectly into your paper. Yay! You copy and paste the paragraph into your paper, but you don't give credit to the source. This is plagiarism. To avoid plagiarizing or passing someone else's intellectual property off as your own, be sure to include a citation after the quote. Plagiarism can be either intentional or unintentional, so we need to look at ways to avoid being an information thief. Here are 5 easy steps to help you avoid plagiarism. Number 1. Use original ideas and opinions. Write your own thoughts and explanations regarding your research topic. If you do need to use information from another source, be sure it is relevant. And if you do use it, make sure you cite it. Number 2, paraphrase. When you're using information from a source, it's a good idea to put it into your own words. However, you still need to cite the source even though you're paraphrasing.
Again, let me emphasize that even though you paraphrased a certain sentence or maybe a couple of sentences from a source or a research paper, it is again important to cite the author or the researcher from where you took that idea, because again, even if it is paraphrased, the idea remains the author's. Okay, it's not yours. So again, you need to cite that.
Information that is common knowledge, for example, the sky is blue, does not need to be cited. Number 3, cite your sources. As I've already said, you need to cite information that you get from a source. Whether it is from a book, journal article, blog, or website, you need to cite it. Here's an example of a citation. In the parentheses, you can see that both the publication year and page number are given.
This is an example of a direct quotation, right? And this was already discussed in Practical Research 1, wherein you copy-paste the exact wording of the author, right? And you started with an open quotation and then close quotation, and then you include the page number. Since this is a direct quotation, you did not paraphrase or anything, it has to have the page number. If it is indirect quotation, you would not need to cite the page number, but you need to cite the author and the year. And yeah, that was already discussed as well in Practical Research 1, the direct and indirect quotation. Please refresh that if you kind of forgot what is the difference between indirect quotation and direct quotation.
There are different ways of doing this depending on the citation style you're using. Sometimes it can be difficult to tell when a citation is needed. When in doubt, cite it. Number 4, use quotation marks. If you're putting information into your paper that you took directly from a source, be sure to put quotation marks around that information. This tells the reader that you're quoting directly from your source.
Help!
Number 5, ask for help. If you're just not sure when and how to cite your information, ask for help. There are several options available to you to get help with your citations. If you're on campus, you can visit ACE. ACE is Southeastern's Academic Center for Enrichment. You can also ask a librarian such as myself, and you can even use online tools such as Purdue OWL's website, which offers resources for both MLA and APA.
You can also use Purdue, right? Just make sure that it is APA writing style. We do not use MLA again, so it's APA and it's 7th edition. Now, that is all. So how to avoid plagiarism? Again, cite, and if you are in doubt, you cite. And please make sure whether you want to have direct quotation or indirect quotation in citing your sources. Again, plagiarism is it's form of a theft because you are stealing someone's intellectual property rights. And also we have a law in the Philippines that protects the intellectual property rights of a person, and again it's a criminal offense. So it's very critical and important that we avoid plagiarism at all costs, okay? Because it does not just affect your grade, but it affects your credibility as a researcher, right? So that's it. We already had a review on research ethics and a review on how to avoid plagiarism. Now, since we're already talking about APA style, would like to share a PowerPoint presentation I made. This is about the 7th edition, right? Because last year we used 6th edition, and then the 7th edition was already released sometime earlier this year, like last year, around last quarter of last year. So we are encouraged to use this APA 7th edition, and these are the most notable changes. And if you can see the this is from online Thesis Statistician, and that is their Facebook page, and I grabbed it from them, so that's why I'm mentioning it, because of course we need to cite from where we got the information. So just very quick glance at 7th edition. We do not include the publisher location anymore. Okay, so be careful, and this is very important when we are already doing a references list, okay? And in-text citations are shortened before, right? If it's like first time you cite the authors, up to 5 people, right? Up to 5 to 6, we can mention the 5 to 6, right? But now it's automatically et al, even if it's first time citation. Yes, okay. If for example Taylor and Cutler, it's just 2, still the same, we can say Taylor and Cutler. But if it's it's 3 or more, you use et al, even if it's the first time to cite those authors. So that's 7th edition. And since we have a very short in-text citation for 3 or more people, up to our references list can accommodate up to 20 authors. Okay, so it's like it's okay to cite as many authors in the references list. DOIs are formatted as URLs, Okay, it's no longer DOI and then DOI colon and then this one, but HTTPs and then the URL. Again, DOI is data object identifier, and this was already discussed, right? Practical Research 1, and also in my previous video I already talked about DOI. Citing web pages, instead of using retrieved from and then HTTPs and then the URL, you do not use that. Instead, the title is being italicized, and after that you put from which website did you get that. So in this case it's BBC News, and then you put the URL, and then citing ebooks, from putting Kindle version, you use Springer Nature. This is the book itself, right? The title of the ebook. And contributors other than authors, so you include as author the director, executive producer, host, instructor, person uploaded the video if it's an online streaming video, and if it's a photograph, then photographer. Yes, this one, please use the singular they. Before we, for example, a researcher's career depends on how often he is cited. We're using he to refer to a researcher. Now, it's a researcher's career depends on how they are cited. Notice that even if it's a singular researcher, but then you use they, because the researcher can be girl or boy, right? And so we are sensitive. That's why we use they instead of he. And again, each examiner submitted his or her assessment. Now it's already their assessment, and it's a singular they. Be sensitive to the labels. You do not use the poor. Instead, you use people living in poverty. You do not use transsexuals. You use transgender people. It's important to be sensitive to labels. It is again part of what? Research ethics. And appropriate level of specificity. You do not say over 65s, right? You say people aged from 65 to 75 or 65 to 80. You have to be specific. And instead of saying, I'm using Asian, in this study, we have Asian participants. You do not say that. So in this study, our participants are Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Thai. Okay, so be specific. And actually, we have more fonts to choose from. We have Times New Roman 12, Arial 11, Georgia 11, Calibri 11, Lucida Sans Unicode 10. Okay, so this is the updated version. And for our research in Practical Research 2, as your advisor, I told everyone that for uniformity, we shall use Times New Roman 12, right, for everyone. And no more running head before, like it's there is some header there, but now you do not use that anymore. And there are a lot of updated heading styles. There are 5 heading styles, right? But for our research, we are using centered, bold, and title case, right? The example is there. It's centered, bold, right? And yeah, the title case is there. So centered and bold. So we can actually have also left aligned, bold, title case. Like left aligned is left, right, and left, right. It's left and bold. Also left aligned, bold, italic, it's fine. Indented, bold. So there are actually lots of heading styles, but let's stick to the centered, bold, title case because this was what we used to have also last year, and also to avoid confusion because maybe we like, okay, let's update this to left aligned, bold, and maybe others will ask, oh miss, before miss, in our research 1, diba, we have centered, bold, title case. And so yeah, this is to avoid confusion. Okay, so it's just good to know that there are already many updated heading styles. And basically that is a brief glance of most notable changes in 7th edition. And if you want more, right, I have a PDF This is right the APA guideline, and I have already sent this, right, the 7th APA 7th edition manual, right, the manual. So all the details are there for 7th edition if you really want to be more specific and study that. Yeah, I already also had uploaded this, right, in our Facebook group page, right? Okay, so basically that's it. And let's discuss chapter 3 now. It's good to note that for chapter 3, which is research methodology, the parts remain the same, just as the parts in practical research 1. In practical research 1, we have the first one is research design, then followed by the research locale. Where's their period? Research locale, research participants or research respondents. Okay, we do not use informants anymore. And then next is it's followed by the research instrument, and then the data collection procedure and the data analysis procedure. All right, so hey, let us try to discuss, okay, because we are already discussing chapter 3 this week, because this week you can actually start collecting your data by going to Google Form and making a Google Form for your questionnaire, and make sure you include the consent. Okay, I will send you the consent letter. Okay, let me see if I still have got the research the consent letter, consent form. It's not here, no, maybe it's in the other lap, in my other PC. Anyway, okay, let's begin discussing chapter 3, research methodology. Let's start with design. Okay, so this is a guideline in how you write. Okay, so this is a format for chapter 3, and define the design you will use, and of course you cite the references. By the way, these designs, okay, I had a short definition of each design. This is taken from our book. Okay, so if you want to cite the references, who is the author, who are the authors of our practical research 2 book, okay, it's Cristobal and Cristobal. Okay, so you cite them. Explain and justify the design. Okay, why did you use, for example, in your study you are using correlational design? Why are you using correlational design? You justify the design, and you can actually read the related studies. Okay, it's a clue nga. Oh, our related studies are using correlational, and why are they using correlational? Okay, so you can use that to support the justification of the design you are using. So that's it. I will not discuss anymore how the designs, because again I have a separate YouTube video about the designs, right? And that is very, very specific, so you can use that if you forgot what are the designs. After the research design is you are going to write about the research locale. Use the proper name of the school. It's not University of Cebu Pri. It's University of Cebu - Main Campus Senior High School Department. There's no comma. It's fine like that. Okay. Now, so I included here both the researchers and the participants are from the same university. So the local is still the school, but more specifically, it is a virtual campus, since the modality of teaching is online instruction in this time of COVID-19 pandemic. The students, both the researchers and the respondents, may be in different places across the country at the conduct of the study, but they all meet in their virtual campus. Okay, so we have virtual campus, we have Kite Academy as our virtual campus, right? And we can also use Zoom or Google Meet in meeting virtually. All right, so you specify that, but again remain the same. It's University of Cebu because we have a virtual campus. After that is the research participants. The research participants are the students from University of Cebu Main Campus Senior High School Department. Is there a comma? Wait, maybe I'll just try to check on that. Okay, so again, you specify that those are the participants. Identify and explain the sampling method used. Okay, please see the textbook, e-textbook. We are using probability sampling now. We do not use the non-probability sampling. And there are 4 types under probability sampling. We have simple random sampling, stratified random sampling, cluster sampling, and systematic sampling. Okay, in page 150 to 152 of your e-textbook. Okay, what are these, man? Okay, you can read. So I'll have here, page 150. Alright. So, yeah, simple random sampling. So this is a method of choosing samples in which all the members of the population are given an equal chance to be selected as your respondents. It is an unbiased way of selection as samples are drawn by chance. Oh. There are various ways of getting the samples through simple random sampling. These include roulette wheel, fishbowl technique, and the use of random numbers. Like there's a table of random numbers. So that's just it. For example, you want to have your population is, let's say your population is grade 12 STEM students in the afternoon session. Okay, how many are the students in the afternoon session of STEM? Okay, you just and then you select a sample, okay, that will identify that population. So again, population is all STEM students in the afternoon session, of course grade 12. That is your population. The sample is how many people, how many students will you get from that population of STEM grade 12 STEM students in the afternoon session. How many? That's your sample size. Okay, you can observe the fishbowl technique as follows. Alright, that's how you determine the sample. And then when using the table of random numbers, you can take the following steps. You can read that in your book. Next is stratified random sampling. The population is first divided into different strata. Then then the sampling follows. Age, gender, educational qualifications are just some of the criteria used in dividing the population into strata. Example, the researcher will study the common causes and effects of smoking among senior high school. Equal representations of students are selected from various samples from public and private schools. Okay, so that is the first stratum. Then, the selected private and public schools samples are chosen from each grade level. That's the second stratum. Finally, samples are chosen by gender. The sampling process is done in stages starting from the first stratum up to the last stratum. Okay. In the simple random sampling, for example, in your title, you are not really specific which strand. It's just all senior high school students. So, and then it's just random. Whoever senior high school student can take the survey, and then those will be your sample. So, but of course, the bigger the population is, and then if, for example, you just have a small sample to represent the population, your research will not be as credible, because your target is all senior high school, but then you only have a limited sample. So it's okay actually to have like this study, so a relationship between academic procrastination and academic performance among ABM, grade 12 ABM senior high school students. Okay, so at least in the title, we all know that it's just specific to ABM. And you have to justify that. Why only ABM? Why is that? So you can justify that in your research participants in choosing them. Right? And then, after that simple random sampling, you have this stratified random sampling. Okay? So you select the sample by strata. Okay, you have 1, 2, 3, depends on you. And then we have cluster sampling. This is used in a large-scale studies in which the population is geographically spread out. In these cases, sampling procedures may be difficult and time-consuming. So here, a researcher wants to interview 100 senior high school honor students to have enough representatives of the different public schools within the division. Now, if there are 10 public schools in this division, each cluster school must have at least 10 samples to complete the total statistics of 100. Okay? And then systematic sampling. This is a method of selecting every nth element of the population. For example, every fifth, every ninth, eighth, 11th element. After the size of the sample has been determined, the selection of the sample follows. So for example, you want to have your population is, let's say, 200 students. That's the population. Systematic sampling is every fifth, or say let's every 10th in that sample will be automatically the sampling size. Okay, so that's just it. That's systematic sampling. So you can actually use the table of random numbers by Nies Wiadomi of 2002. Okay, and others are asking, right, Miss, how many are we going to how many participants are we going to survey for practical research too? So you can use other considerations. Now, sample sizes as small as 30 are generally adequate to ensure that the sampling distribution of the mean will approximate the normal curve shot by 1990. So, Miss, even as small as 30? Yes, that's correct. When the total population is equal to or less than 100, this same number may serve as the sample size. This is called the universal sampling. So 30 is the universal sampling. Now, according to Gay of 1976, the following are acceptable sizes for the types of research. If it's a correlational research, diba, this is a very common design that we're using, no? So 30 subject or respondents is enough. Comparative, 15 subjects per group. And experimental is 15 to 30 subjects per group. We're not using experimental, no? And only very few is using comparative. We are using correlational na descriptive and correlational na predictive. So it's the minimum is 30 respondents. Okay, now, Miss, is it okay to stick to 30? If you stick to 30, it's fine, but it will not be. But the credibility of the results of the study will be at question, or it's not very credible, because you want to have the population of all the ABM students now, and then you just have a 30 representative as the sample size. It may be acceptable, yes, but then it does not mean that the results will be as reliable and accurate, because the sample is just a few 30. So Miss, how are we going to increase our reliability and accuracy or credibility of our results? The more respondents, then the more accurate, and the more credible your results will be. So it's okay to have 50. If you can have 50 respondents, then good. If you can have 100 respondents, then that's better. But you can stick to 30 if you want to have this acceptable size. And if your target is the credibility and accuracy of the results, like it will really represent the population, then go for 50 or 70 respondents. It's okay. So the higher the respondents that you are going to survey, then the higher chances of you having accurate results to represent the population. Haha, that's it. And then letter D is research instrument. Again, you can state that it's a valid and reliable survey questionnaire. You have to cite from where did the questionnaire come from and who made it. Was it tested for validity and reliability? You mentioned that there. And then what are the questions about, and what does the instrument measure? It's important to state na this questionnaire measures what. Okay. And then data collection procedure, that's letter E. Present tense, no? Okay, starts with the transmittal letter from secures the valid and reliable questionnaire from the trusted research databases. Since the questionnaire is valid, the researchers make a Google form containing the questions. Okay. Sampling procedure already helped identify the number of participants. The researchers then send the Google form links to the chosen participants. The Google form already contains consent letter, instructions for the questionnaire, and the actual questions. Okay, and the collection of responses is automatic as soon as the participants complete the online survey. Once they click submit, it means the responses are already sent to the researcher's email inbox. That's the collection procedure. And then how to analyze the data, we are going to use SPSS. So yeah, that's it. Actually, you can follow this. And again, survey via Google Forms, research of input to collected numerical data sa atong SPSS. That is statistical package for the social sciences. Sometimes it's known as IBM, rather, SPSS statistics software. And then, of course, you're going to analyze based on the SOP, diba? Internet addiction. This is an example of the SOP. Lastly, significance test will be done to your answer. This is just a rough draft of the analysis procedure. We can have an extensive analysis procedure once we are going to discuss how to interpret the data you collected. Okay, so that's already discussion of chapter 4 now. Okay, this is how you interpret the data. Okay, so that's why this is just a rough draft of analysis procedure. The important thing is you will know, so after I have the data, I can use now the the SPSS. No, I will input the data, the numerical data in SPSS, so that it will give me, you know, it will give me the statistics I need to interpret my data. And then so you will have the tables of gathered data will be analyzed according to every SOP. That's very important. And basically that is chapter number 3. Okay, so the task for this week is to make sure that your instrument is already valid and reliable, and make sure that the instrument measures what you want to measure in your SOP. And please start filing your Google Forms. Let me see how your Google form looks like, so that I approve it. And if it's fine, then you can already launch the Google form and already start your survey, right? So that by next week you're already given the week to have time to do the survey. All right. Oh well, okay, that is all for the today's session. Okay, so again, just a recap, we already talked about research ethics, a refresher course on ethics, and how to avoid plagiarism. It's important. And then some of the most notable changes for AP 7th edition. You have to be careful with your citation again, and how to write the chapter 3. Next week, since you are going to write chapter 3, be reminded that the deadline for chapter 3, this chapter 3, okay, is actually easy because you already had chapter 3 worksheet. So it's very easy not to do chapter 3. Okay, so submit a chapter 3. That is on. So this is the deadline for chapter 3 worksheet. No, so you can submit on or before October 25. No, because I will let you submit the chapter 1, 2, and 3, which is PT number 4, right? Sometime around this one, 29 or 30th, because chapter 1, 2, and 3 will serve as your first quarter exam, and it will also serve as your PT number 4, right? So you need to really do better on chapters 1, 2, and 3. All right, I hope I am clear. And again, if you have questions on this discussion, feel free to comment down below on this YouTube video. What are your questions, so that it can be addressed? And again, this is Ms. Jong, and stay safe, stay healthy, and see you guys on our next online virtual class. Bye!